Good evening, everybody. Good evening. We're going to start our presentation. Hopefully, all of you got a chance to get some food. We also have a vegetarian option there as well, too. But I just want to introduce myself. I'm Norma Camacho, CEO of Valley Water. And it's a real pleasure for me to be here tonight to all of you and to go through the education process of Valley Water together. And so I'm really excited about everything that you're learning about water, and hopefully you will share all of this education and your experience here with your neighbors and families and friends on the projects that we are working on and the projects that you feel that are really going to be important to your community in the future. And so just a little bit about us. We are a multifaceted organization with a multi-purpose mission. And we are unique among water agencies in that we are a drinking water wholesaler, as well as a groundwater management agency and a flood protection agency as well. And we also have, we are an environmental agency because all the things that we do, we ensure that we provide a net positive impact to the environment. And so all of that together sometimes creates, a situation where we have to try to balance all of those needs with the community needs as well. And so a lot of our work has to do with enhancing our water supply and protecting people's homes and businesses from flooding, and also to protect the environment as well, as I talked about before. And one example of the competing needs that we have to deal with is I'm sure that many of you have seen many of the articles on Anderson Dam and the fact that FERC is requiring that we dewater the dam. And that has a lot of water supply consequences, environmental consequences. There's a public safety issue involved with that too. And we have to work really hard, and our board has to work really hard to balance all those needs every time these issues come up. And sometimes the needs actually conflict with each other. Sometimes they don't, and that's when we have good win-win situations. And so overall, to ensure sustainability in our organization, we do focus on the investments that will secure our existing supplies, that will protect our infrastructure, and expand water conservation and water reuse efforts, and optimize our water infrastructure systems. And so, in addition, we are also pursuing, to that effect, more storage opportunities like the expansion of Pacheco Reservoir, and we're addressing that to increase our storage capacity, also to improve water quality and reliability, and also to provide benefit for the Central Coast steelhead, which is endangered in that area. And so again, trying to balance all those needs as well. Another thing that's really core to our mission and our organization is really, again, taking care of the environment and being good stewards. And that's important to our board, it's important to us, and it's important to the community. And so a lot of our environmental efforts can be seen with the Safe Clean Water program, and we're going to be talking about a lot of that as part of this 101 Academy. And we've done a lot of work as well with our fisheries and aquatic habitat collaboration effort on the Coyote Creek and Stevens Creek and the Guadalupe River as well. And we'll also give you a peek at some of those projects as well. And so we've also had a large role in really shaping the future of open space and protecting those open spaces in the Coyote Valley. And we work very closely with a lot of the open space districts throughout the county of Santa Clara to accomplish this. And so as you engage in this Water 101 session activities, I hope you'll get walk away with a better idea of what we do here at Valley Water, and basically what we value as an organization. And basically, hopefully, it aligns with what your values are, and I think they will. And really, we can work together to really champion all of our activities, all of our energies into these efforts that create a positive community environment for all of us. And so with that, I do want to call to the attention that we have some board of directors here. First, Director Santos is here. I don't know if he wants to say a few words.
Just a few. Welcome. I've been here for 20 years and I'm still learning. I'm glad you're going to be ambassadors. Academy 101. A few people I know, like Roy Hayes and Swami. They have some experience, but you never quit learning. And so thank you for taking out your precious time to join us and pass on the good words. And thank you for District 3.
Mhm. And thank you, Director Santos, for joining us tonight. And you've always been a long-term board member and very dedicated to our organization. And so now I'd like to introduce the chair of our Valley Water Board of Directors, and that's Director Naishue, and she'll provide some words for this, for all of you. And again, thank you for being here and showing your interest in Valley Water.
Thank you, Nomar, and good evening, everybody. I should call you water ambassadors. Good evening. My name is Naishue. I represent District 5, and I'm also the chair for 2020. This water district is governed by an elected board, and each of the board member is elected from one of the 7 district. Director Santos represents District 3. I represent District 5. And this is the boardroom. The board meets. The board sits over there, and then we meet regularly every 2 weeks, the second and the fourth Tuesday. In addition to the regular meeting, we have lots of special meetings and committees and advisory committees, and working on many challenging issues related to water management, as Norma just mentioned. This Water Ambassador Program is a program the board is very interested in and think it's very important, because one of the board's job, or probably the most important job, is to connecting with the communities. Not only the communities we individual represents, but also the overall community in Santa Clara County, because water management is county-wide. It's hard to dissect a integrated system into District 1, District 2, District 3. So every board member try his or her best that we manage water in a comprehensive manner for everyone's benefit in Santa Clara County. And as part of that, making connection to the community is really important. Our job is it's a little different than like a city council or county supervisor, because we are a pretty technical organization. We deal with water management, as you heard about it from Norma. So some of the things that we do is not directly impacting your daily life. So it's less of, I need a traffic light, or there's a pothole that's happens on a pretty frequent interaction, like on a city council level. But then what we do, some of the project that we do, it takes 5 years, 8 years to accomplish. And sometimes we like to think that because we're doing such a good job that people don't actually recognize us and then the kind of work we do. Usually when things go wrong, then people started noticing something is going on. But as I said, this organization has been doing a pretty good job through our very competent and technical staff. So when you turn on the faucet, water comes. Very seldom there's any issues with that. This kind of work that we do to make connection with the community is sometimes not direct. So that's why this Water Ambassador Program is really important to this board, because who else can do a better job in making that connection with the community as all of you as the community leaders. We actually had a very overwhelming response. We received more than 70 applications. So you should be very proud of yourself that you're sitting in this room as one of the second session of 21 water ambassadors. Norma mentioned that recently there's the articles about Anderson Dam and the challenges we're facing with the Anderson Dam. And then if you're interested in water, you probably noticed that we haven't had any rain for over a month. And the weather out there is like, I have to remind myself, this is only February. We're not in May yet. Once you're in this program, and then I'm pretty sure our staff prepared very comprehensive learning material for all of you to get into. And you should be able to talk to your community, your friends, your relatives about, we haven't had rain for 30 days. What's happening with that? What's the impact? What is the impact of Anderson Dam? How does that impact water supply? How does that impact the downstream fisheries or habitats? And all of these things are connected with each other. It's very challenging to just bring one issue out and then let's only focus on this issue, because in our world, in this water world, water is connected in many different ways. So getting involved in this ambassador program is really the best way to understand water management in Santa Clara County. So I really want to commend you for your interest in water, and also for your dedication of your free time to learn something about water. And we hope to continue working with you, and you can serve as our eyes and ears in the community. Thank you very much. Oh, I need to introduce Mara, who is the staff who is going to introduce the program.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, my name is Mara Burton, and I am with the Office of Civic Engagement, and I'm here to give you an overview of the Water 101 Ambassador Academy. Valley Water began hosting Water 101 Ambassador Academy in 2019 in an effort to build and sustain a diverse network of influencers who are willing to serve as community water ambassadors on local water issues and refer others to future Academy sessions. The overall objective is to educate, inspire, engage, and empower a diverse group of community members to be water champions on issues related to safe, clean water, and promote environmental stewardship within their own neighborhoods and local communities as well. There are three main goals of the Water 1 Ambassador Academy program. The first goal is education and knowledge sharing. The second is community building, and the third is networking and development. Education and knowledge sharing is important to improve the community's understanding of the complex water issues facing Silicon Valley and Valley Water's mission, roles, function, and learning about the community's needs and issues. Water ambassadors will serve as neighborhood liaisons and leaders by engaging with their own unique communities about issues related to water that affect them, or share information that is shared here at these sessions to be available and to be a viable resource and opportunities on pertinent issues to share with your communities and engagements. Community building is essential to improve the strength and neighborhoods and relationships, to better understand the needs of our communities, and to better service our customers. Since we have diverse communities, community engagement and participation in local government is very important here at Valley Water as well. Valley Water values the active participation of water ambassadors to develop a network of their own personal ecosystems to become community liaisons and share real-time information on community issues and needs, as well as also sharing information about Valley Water's projects, details on impacts, and also to be a community resource for your neighbors, friends, family, and others. By the end of Water 101 Ambassador Program, you will have an increased general knowledge about the state and local water systems, as well as infrastructure, local water supply, valley water flood protection and other flood protection measures, and environmental stewardship projects. We want to engage and encourage Water 101 ambassadors to be local water champions and to be stewards of their environment. We hope that you stay connected by creating a two-way communications to share pertinent water information so that it's flowing both ways about news, projects, updates, and other issues that are related to the impacts of water. And now I will introduce Matthew Gloria Dalton, who's going to take a few minutes for each of us to get to know each other a bit better. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. How are we doing tonight? Good. Welcome to the second annual Water Academy. So we're going to get going by going through some introductions. So up here on the screen, you're going to see a name, organization, or occupation, and one thing you'd hope to learn. So about a minute each, and we're going to go through each member of the cohort. So who would like to start? Any? There we go. Yeah, and there's a mic at the table if you could grab the mic, and we can all hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me without it? No?
It's up to you.
Oh, you don't want to hear me
Yeah.
amplified.
If you use it, it will be recorded.
Is that, oh, God, that. Okay, so my name is Agnes Feith, and I am a recruiter at Stanford University. I recruit for information technology positions. And one of the things that I would like to learn is how do we balance the needs of California Big Ag with the needs that we have as consumers? That's it.
Cool. Thank you.
You want to go next? There you go.
You can remove it. Yeah, perfect.
Hi, my name is Sabrina Walensky. I use she, her pronouns. I also work at Stanford for the Office of the Vice President for the Arts. And I hope to learn how the water actually gets out of my tap from its source, because it just magically appears. And I've always wanted to know more about how it gets from point A to point B. So.
I'm Brooke. Am I talking loud enough? Okay. I go to West Valley College, and I'm a double major in park management and anthropology. I also work part-time for the city of Cupertino as a park ranger, which Stevens Creek runs through. And I want to know the connection between what we can do in parks and the water, because there's all these water sources in parks, but are they actually being managed properly?
Hi, I'm Swanee Edwards from Morgan Hill, and I'm a graduate of the first inaugural Ambassadors Program. I had always been interested in water. We have some unique water issues in South County, with the whole community of San Martin still getting their drinking water from wells and having septic tanks and septic systems on the same property, kind of hearkening back to the dark ages. But I'll tell you, I learned so much that I was able to, to talk to community groups throughout South County about water. I'm very interested in Anderson Dam. When I first moved here 30 years ago, I had a little house right below the dam, and I've walked up there hundreds of times. So you guys are going to enjoy this. The last day, the tour, it'll blow your mind. So glad to see everybody here.
My name's Connie Ludwig, and I live in San Martin, and I was very interested in the water. It's kind of funny, when you come from the city, you move to the country, there was a problem with the water, and I'm like, oh, it's no big deal, we're on a well. Well, it did not occur to me, the water comes from someplace, and so it's a very blonde thing to think. I'm an advocate for San Martin, and so I thought that I should get some information so that I can spread that on to our community. So thank you, everybody, for, first of all, for accepting me and for holding this course.
Good evening, I'm Tim Frash. I live down in Gilroy. I work at the NASA Ames Research Center, but that's not why I'm here. I volunteer with the Open Space Authority and want to become more involved with them. And when I heard about this academy, I thought it'd be a great way for me to learn about water and integrate with the public when I'm in the parks down there. And something personal I'd like to learn about is more about the Pacheco potential of the reservoir that they could build that would expand the capacity here.
Hi, I'm Nicole. I am in East Side San Jose, which is nowhere near Gilroy, but we're in the same district. And I am a user experience professional. Formerly worked for Google. I'm on a self-imposed sabbatical, and I wanted to spend my time learning more about what it is I care about. I'm a sustainability and environmental advocate, and I'm really, really curious as a native of Silicon Valley, what policy decisions one of the largest economies on the planet is doing to secure our water resources and our environmental resources and ecosystem services for posterity going forward in an age of uncertainty in environmental climate change, but also policy and politics.
Good evening. My name's Roy Hayes. I am retired as far as a paying job is concerned, but I'm the Commodore of the South Bay Yacht Club, which is the same as a full-time job and more. My interest here is to understand how the water district and the water resource managers around the state are going to accommodate the ever-increasing demand on our water resources. People keep moving into California faster than they're moving out, and especially the Bay Area. And I'm a strong advocate of technology, desalinization, water recycling. I've had a couple of businesses that did some of that in my sordid career. Actually, I was in the first environmental studies class at San Jose State, and my senior project was to sit in on water district board meetings so I could learn about water resource management. So I've been involved since 1975.
Hi, my name is Samantha McMillan. I'm a 5th through 8th grade social studies STEM teacher right down the street. And I am also involved with Open Space Authority, and I am a recent California Naturalist certified or graduate. So I'm trying to connect all of those things together and learn a little bit more about Coyote Valley and what that impact looks like on the acquisition of that land looks like on our floodplain.
Hello, I'm Justin Triano. I'm a founder of a nonprofit called Community Express. We basically bring together art and community around the elements of transportation. And a lot of it is bicycle advocacy. Right now, looking at a lot of the bike trails in San Jose around the creeks. I think what I'm hoping to get out of this is how we can, utilize the art group that we are involved with on how to spread the information and message of the things that we learn in this class, as well as how we can leverage the waterways to build art and community around the things that are already going up in this area.
Hi, my name is Valerie Niles. I work at Adobe Animal Hospital in Los Gatos, but I'm looking to I've always been interested in environment and the open spaces and such, so this was kind of the thing that I wanted to get into just to learn more, because I'm also in the same vein of like, oh, we turn the faucet on and there's water, but where does it come from? And I took a class for environmental studies, and we kind of we talked about environmental justice, and so I was thinking about that too, and I was like, these are all, great things to kind of learn more about and kind of learn about more our sustainability practices. So that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pamela Traunstein. I am a part-time teacher that's totally not relevant to this, but a former graduate of Project WET from the state, and did some of that here. I am also a master gardener, and a facilitator for Free Forest School, which is sort of for the 0 to 8-year-olds range. So I do that for both Santa Clara and Santa Cruz County. So there's a lot of things I hope to learn, but mostly I'm looking at sort of the impact and things that might be relevant to the kids that I'm interacting with, and I'm also a volunteer for my kids' preschool, so, you know, thinking a little bit more about that, because I got a lot out of Project Wet and the lessons and things like that that I got to do with kids, so that's kind of where it's at.
Good evening, everyone. Cesar Zaragoza. I am a senior banker for a large federal bank. And I've been to places where they don't get any water, but for a couple hours a day, they collect it, travel to different, and I, realize how important it is and how much we don't value, how it's like just turn it on and we have hot water and we can drink it and not have any problems. So I want to know how it all connects from beginning to end. I'm interested in learning everything.
Hi, my name is Aster, and I'm a plumber, a commercial plumber. So from our schooling, we learned about how the water supposedly got to us and how we deliver the water to the people in the houses, and we get rid of the wastewater. So I want to know the real story. And my daily job is make sure the water come in. We, make sure it has enough pressure to go up the stories, and we make sure there's no backflow back into the source. And then how do we get rid of the water? And so this is kind of like the missing link. And why I become a plumber, because I learned at a young age when my dad grew up and they didn't have indoor plumbing. And it's hard to imagine not having indoor plumbing. And they didn't have running water either. So they had to dig wells, which a lot of time you get no water. So they often have to trade food for water. So it's something I care deeply in my heart.
Hi, my name is Laura Santisteban, and I am a student at San Jose State University. I study water restoration and management, and I also work at an anodizing company, which we deal with thousands of gallons of water a day with the treatment and stormwater monitoring. And I kind of want to know like how our little facility kind of fits into the big old cog of the whole system in general. So that's why I'm here.
Good evening. I'm Jolene Otto. I actually have done some work for the Water District here. I'm normally a freelance photographer for several newspapers in San Francisco. But during the drought, I got a call from a gentleman, Marty Grimes, who doesn't work here anymore. But he had me help out with documenting all the drought areas, all the reservoirs. And I'll have to admit, out of all the jobs I've had, I enjoyed that the most, getting out there in nature and doing the before and after pictures. But one of the things that came to my mind when I was doing that is I kept thinking, wow, these guys do so much. I didn't know this, and nobody else knows it either. Like I would see the fish ladders and the bird boxes, and I just had no idea that the Water District was behind so many of these things. So this is a perfect answer to my questions from back then. So I'm very happy to be with you all tonight. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Janet, and I'm currently at Mission College finishing my GE and hopefully transferring to San Jose State for civil engineering. And one thing I hope to learn, I'm pretty sure I'm going to learn a lot here, especially around the professionals of where water comes from and how we can just turn on a faucet and we get water. But I'm really interested in learning where our water is stored and how it's built, because it might sound crazy, but we're in California and we lie along a fault line, and so we're bound to have a really big earthquake to come shooting from SoCal all the way up to NorCal, and so we have to be prepared for backups where water can be stored, and also how long it can be turned off so that people can't turn on their faucets. Thank you.
Hello,
My name is Vera Baum. I live in Los Altos. I'm an engineering consultant. And one of the main concerns I have is we have overdevelopment in our area. So, what's going to be happening with our water resources, how, we're going to be supplying the community, and the increased runoff and the potential pollution, increased pollution that we're going to have in our area.
I'm Kjell Carlson. I'm up in Los Altos Hills. I think that's the very northern edge of District 7 and, in fact, the entire water district, I think. We're actually so far north, so we have Heskey water. We don't, but everything else applies to all the flood control and everything else, and it's actually a fascinating system, and it appeals to the inner system engineer how this all works, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to come here and learn.
Hi, my name's Sheila Goki. I'm with Coldwell Banker Los Gatos. But probably more relevant to this discussion would be where I was raised, which is on a farm in the San Joaquin Valley with a well and a septic tank. And septic tanks only are about 12 feet beyond the ground. Unfortunately, the farmers' wells are way, 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 way below that. So you don't really get any of that crossover, dark ages stuff occurring. So we on a farm started, conserving our well, our only source of water, in ways that I don't even want to discuss with anyone because it's just going to be too ooey. But we did everything we possibly could. I mean, I never leave my water running when I'm brushing my teeth, because if I did that when I was a kid, who knows what might have happened. And what do I hope to learn? Actually, I would like to learn something that is going to allow me to be able to take a piece of the urban village, the water and how it all works, down to those farmers in the San Joaquin Valley who absolutely, positively, under no circumstances think that the smelt are worth the water. And isn't that little guy that's in the dam? I mean, good to eat too. Are they? Yeah. Well, then why don't we just go fishing? Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think that's everyone. Do you want me to introduce Raphael? So our next speaker is actually the only speaker that's going to be coming from external, and it is Rafael Chavez, coming from the Department of Water Resources from the state of California's State Water Project, and he's going to educate you about the state water system, which will set us up nicely for what we do here in Santa Clara County. So let me just cue up his presentation.
Buenas noches. Good evening, everybody. All right. So as you were talking, I have answers for everybody, but it'll take us forever to answer every single question. But I'm going to do my best to get through my part and in the same vein, answer many of the questions, inform you about things you had no idea about. One of the coolest things about being involved in the water business is that it gets into you. It gets into your veins, and all you can talk about is water, water every single day. So I'm hoping to get you addicted to the concept of water, but in a more informed fashion. There's many misconceptions out there, and so I'm gonna try to provide you the best point of view from the state perspective. My job as the face of the department, this is the face. They could have hired another face, but this is the face they hired. Is to deal with fact. A lot of people in the department sometimes hear, "Oh, you're Rafa, you're dealing with the public." I said, the public needs to be informed. The public needs to know. Transparency is the key word. And so this is part of my job, to come talk to everybody, as many people as I can. So I travel up and down the state. So we're going to get into this, and you're going to see why I travel up and down the state. So the 6 things you need to know about the State Water Project. So 6 things. It sounds simple, but here we go. Ready? All right. So the 6 things. The California Department of Water Resources manages and operates the State Water Project. Number 2, the State Water Project is one big system designed to deliver water across California. Number 3, there are 29 state water contractors who receive water via the State Water Project. Number 4, the Department of Water Resources is the biggest energy consumer in the state. Number 5, there are other water projects besides the State Water Project. And number 6, the Department of Water Resources is actively addressing key issues that impact us today. So I'm going to go through these things and break it down, okay? And if you want to follow, I think the slides are in your binder there. And then there's also, if you look at the outside sleeve, there's also a little handout that I put in there in terms of the State Water Project. So you might want to reference that too as we speak. And it looks like this real quick. So just kind of guide you there. And if anybody back there wants one, they're sitting right there next to the mic. If anybody back there didn't get one, that way you kind of follow along. And here we go. So the department mission. The department mission is to manage water resources, the water resources of California, and a key word here, in cooperation with other agencies. And that includes this agency here, the Valley Water District. This is one of the agencies. So our goal here is to coordinate with everybody, develop partnerships, develop plans to work. So nobody's working basically in a silo by themselves. The whole idea is to work in cooperation. You form part of that cooperation. And also to benefit the state's people, which is you, protect, restore, and enhance our natural, keyword natural, as well as our human environments, which is very similar to what CEO Camacho mentioned earlier. It's how we connect with our environment. And so the key words I'm gonna use some of her words is, from the department perspective at the state level, is balance and quality. Water quality is very important. Balance between the urban sector, which is us, between the farming sector, and the environment. We have to create a balance. And all those three sectors, you hear a lot of press, you hear a lot of politics, but it's about water quality. So if we preserve water quality for one sector, it actually spills over to the next sectors, because we all need exactly the same kind of water quality. So we'll get a little bit into that. All right, the Department of Water Resources manages and operates the State Water Project. So the State Water Project, as you can see on your handout, if you open it up, it runs all the way from Oroville, and there's the Upper Lakes too, all the way down to Southern California. And so there's several offshoots of the State Water Project. People know it from the California aqueduct perspective, but the key thing is there's 29 state water contractors, and Valley Water is one of those contractors that receives water from the South Bay Aqueduct. And you'll find it there near where it says the Bay Delta. You'll see points 6, 7, and 8. That's a South Bay Aqueduct. So pay attention to that. That's where the state water, so at least 50% of the water you receive in your area came all the way from Oroville. So whatever happens in Oroville impacts you. So it's very important. Whatever happens in the Delta impacts you. 50%, about 50%. So, and it's all, we'll get a little bit into that about the allocation process, because it's all based on whether we get rain or not, and what amount you get, and what's the allocation capacity or that's for your agency. So, we're one of the largest public and power utilities in the world. And what's your name? Caesar mentioned, what places did you travel where they had to gather water? Okay, so there you go. One of the key things that I want to drive, we might have these discussions, battle politics over water in California. We are very extremely blessed that we have the water agencies that we do, from the state level to the local level, because of these agencies, we can open up our tap and have quality drinking water. So, and I can't speak for the farms because the farms or the people who are still on water pumps, they're in a different location. But when it comes to the urban sector, we are guaranteed that in California. It's very crucial to understand how blessed we are. We're the nation's largest state-owned and operated water delivery system. It's a massive system, 700 miles of a system. Department of Water Resources, I'd just like to point this out, is not to be confused with the Water Resources Control Board. Sometimes in government we have similar naming conventions, but the Water Resources Control Board, they control water rights and water quality. And the Department of Water Resources, where I come from, we deliver water. So just kind of, we're the plumbing system, so kind of understand that as you see that diagram. Number 2, the State Water Project is one big system designed to deliver water across California, as I just explained, and you can see all the different dots on that map. So we're exclusively designed similar to what Valley Water is. We're here for flood protection and drought protection, pretty much. So when we mean flood and drought, it's essentially behind our reservoirs, there's a body of water. And in that body of water is how, in the winter months, we collect the water. And at the same time, we keep it from flooding different areas. And that's the goal, to keep it from flooding, especially the Central Valley. Because the Central Valley, if we didn't have any of these dams, would be one big lake in the summertime. And when it comes to drought, meaning drought control, meaning we're saving water for those dry summer months. And so at that point, we can go from being a lake in the winter to a desert in the summer. Because the nature of California, it's a Mediterranean climate. So sometimes we go through dry spells, we go through very wet spells, as we're going through a very dry spell at this time, being the fact that February, it hasn't rained at all or snowed in this particular month. And I think in over 100 years. So we have very variable climate. So that's pretty much why we need all these series of dams, to make sure that we maintain water for those dry periods. So just to kind of point out here real quick, we have 700 miles of canals and pipeline. Like I mentioned, you can see the map. We have the California Aqueduct, which is, if you've driven on I-5, you'll notice it along the way. There's 444 miles of California Aqueduct, which goes over to Tehachapi into Southern California. Sometimes you'll see there's 2. If you pay attention, if you've driven down I-5, you'll see there's 2 canals. The lower one tends to be the Mendota Delta Canal, which is a federal project. But they don't have markers all the time, so you don't notice which one is which. So one's a federal project, and one's is a state project, part of the State Water Project. Number 3, there are 29 state water contractors who receive water via the State Water Project. And I mentioned this earlier. So the State Water Project supplies water to 27 million people. And you're part of that 27 million people. So this answers one of the questions out there. About 75% of the water goes to urban users. 75% of state water goes to urban users. And the other 25% goes to ag. Just kind of put that in perspective. On the flip side, the federal project that I just mentioned, 80% of that water that comes from Shasta, because our water comes from Lake Oroville, 80% of that water goes to ag in the Central Valley, mostly to the San Joaquin Valley. So it kind of gives you perspective. So there's sort of a balanced division. What the state handles, the urban, and it wasn't originally intended like that, but what happened is when the deals were made back in the 50s to establish the State Water Project, San Jose used to be very much a farming community, but now it isn't, because one of the key factors of establishing a society is water. So people will gravitate where there's water, guaranteed water, like you have guaranteed water here. Well, that's the intent, because we got to rely on nature. But the idea is that your water agency will deliver water. So Valley Water can receive up to 100 acre-feet of water. What does 100 acre-feet? What does an acre-foot mean? An acre, you'll hear this probably over and over as you go through your class. You'll hear that an acre-foot of water is pretty much a football field size. filled up about a foot of water across. So just imagine a football field. So when we're talking acre feet, that's what they mean, sort of in terms of a value. So Valley Water can receive up to 100,000 acre feet of water as a yearly allocation from the state water project. However, the average is about 60,000 acre feet. So even though they're paying for 100, it all depends on the climate, how much the precipitation for that year, how much has it snowed, how much has it rained, and it'll determine a percentage of how much they'll receive for that year. Right now, based on what's happening right now with the weather, obviously it hasn't rained very much, so that percentage might be low, but we can't predict what's going to happen in March, what's going to happen in April in terms of precipitation. But right tomorrow, if you pay attention to the news, there's the snow survey. So when you watch the snow survey, people that I work with, they'll go up to the snow and take a measurement of the snow, and that'll determine how much water is in that snow, and that'll determine how much the runoff will be, how much will go into the reservoirs, so how much then will be allocated to the 29 state water contractors. So if you want to pay attention to that, it'll make more sense to you tomorrow. 4, the Department of Water Resources is the biggest energy consumer in the state. So as we look at this particular grid here, you'll notice that it has little triangles and red dots. Those red dots are actually pumps. And those pumps, every time you use a pump, it's basically to move water up a hill. And it needs a lot of electricity. So that's why we're the biggest energy consumer in the state. So even your water bill at home, water is free from the sky. What you're paying for is the plumbing and the energy it took to get to your home. That's what you're paying for. Just kind of to have an idea. You're not paying, because otherwise if you were paying per unit of water, then it would be at a different price. But the standard is pretty much the energy and the plumbing system, the upkeep, the innovation, everything, all those things that you need, that's what you're paying for. So every time you see a red dot, that means the water's traveling uphill. But every time you see a triangle, it's going downhill. It's the ability to generate energy from that. So that makes us the 4th largest generator of energy. So there's an offset for us. Even though we're spending lots of money buying energy, we're also producing energy for the grid. So, but there's a very important caveat now for the state water project. We expect to be fossil fuel free of reliance on fossil fuel by 2045. So that means we got to change a lot of things. So we're doing our part to be environmentally ready, pretty much, because of climate change and all these things. We got to do our part. So we can't just be consuming energy from where it came from. We have to change. California is always cutting edge. So if we change, whatever we change in a big way, it'll impact the rest of the nation. It'll impact the world. So as being the biggest water project in the world, we're going to change our ways. So that's the goal. 5, there are other water projects besides the state water project. I mentioned earlier the CVP, the Central Valley Project, which runs pretty much parallel to the California Aqueduct. And so if you look at your chart right there where it says 6 and 7, you can imagine there's 2 pumps there. There's the Banks pumping plant and the Jones pumping plant. The Jones pumping plant's a federal pumping plant, and our state water project is the which is actually number 6 here, Banks pumping plant. And these plants pretty much are run by once state and once the federal. So you hear that last week President Trump was here. He was talking about water for the farmers. So he's talking from that perspective of that project. And then at the same time, you'll hear Governor Newsom talk about what we need to do as a state to balance it out. So because we're running on we're pulling out water from the same systems. So what are we going to do to balance these things out? Other local projects, Hetch Hetchy. Everybody's heard of Hetch Hetchy. That's San Francisco. They probably have who's been to Yosemite? You ever look at that water? It's so clear, so pristine. It's like, I want to take a drink. Well, when you go to that side of the bay, that's the water they're drinking. It's an old project. They started their water system a long time ago. There's East Bay Mud, which is Berkeley and Oakland, and so if you find the McCollum Aqueduct, that's part of their system. So they also get water from the Sierras. There's the LA Aqueduct, Colorado River Aqueduct. The reason I mention these things, there's so many big water systems in California. It makes us the great state that we are because we are managing our water a certain way. Of course, there's a lot of challenges with it, but the fact that our urban sectors have the water that they need, we hear different numbers with the 5th biggest economy in the world, the 6th. That's what makes us the fact that we can be sustainable. But it's always a challenge because we're dependent on the climate and all these challenges, climate change and ocean rise, all these things are affecting us. So we gotta be environmental stewards. We gotta think innovation. We gotta think other ways to deal with our water. So just gonna put in all that in there. It's a big challenge, but taking on these challenges will keep us being the state that we are. Other sources of drinking water, groundwater, recycled water, reuse, desalination plants. So there's different ways to get water, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. Number 6, and this is where we get into all these other things. The Department of Water Resources is actively addressing key issues that impact us today. So climate change. Climate change is one of those things that we all got to do our part, change the way we do things. So the department is doing its thing, but what happens with climate change, just to kind of give you a perspective, everybody hears that there's always issues in the Delta. Who's heard of the California Delta? So the California Delta, we heard about the smelt, we hear about the steelhead, we hear about the Chinook salmon, and these are technically. Who's heard of indicator species? It's basically something's happening to these species because the environment's changing so drastic. So eventually, what happens to that species will affect us down the line to us. So it's important to pay attention. But one of the key things about the Delta that I want to mention is the fact that if the Delta has saltwater intrusion, meaning the Pacific Ocean wants to come in, that's the scariest part about the Delta, that nobody's really, we bring it to attention because it's something that we are trying to, we do, the best thing we can do is keep fresh water running out to keep salt water from coming in. So when you're thinking of the Delta, it's basically, think of how the Pacific Ocean is huge, and all we're trying to do is put a finger trying to keep it out. But if it keeps rising, that's a problem. That's the biggest problem in the Delta. And remember that I mentioned water quality? We can't drink salt water. The farmers can't use salt water. The environment, as we stabilize in the Delta, is not a saltwater environment. It's an estuary, so it's a mix of things, but it's not a saltwater environment. So it's very important when you're thinking about why water is going out the Delta. The key reason for that is we got to keep the ocean out. And that's a big, big task. So between keeping the ocean out and taking care of our water needs, it's a huge, huge challenge. So it's not black and white like somebody's just taking water out of there. First thing is first, keeping the ocean out. What are we keeping out? So next time you see any conversations about the Delta, think of that first and then put it in perspective, what it means, what does it really mean? So drought and flood control. Again, we're talking about with climate change, and the reason climate change is on top, we get less snow, we get more rain. Therefore, typically, the snow in the mountains is our bank, and it's supposed to melt slowly, and then by sometime by May, June, it all runs down. But what happens if we don't get snow? We get more rain. It's all coming down in torrents. So at least more, we're more, when it rains a lot, like the past year or the year before that, we run into we run into chances of flooding because we're overrun by water. So the system as it was designed to capture snow melt. But right now we're getting torrents of rain. So there's something that needs to be addressed. So when you're thinking about why dams are being heightened, why there's so much runoff, it's because we're not getting the snow that we used to get. We get more rain because of climate change. We got eco-restore projects. We're trying to do what we need to do to make sure that we keep helping nature out. A lot of the waterways that we have are not natural. We put levees on each side. That's a man-made situation, and basically we developed these channels. So we encroached into nature. Therefore, nature is not exactly what it used to be in terms of that. So we're working to address these things, help the salmon out by creating space for them to develop. So you'll hear about projects like the YOLO bypass. That's what it means, going back to where the rivers used to widen out in the wintertime. And then, of course, in the summertime, it comes back down to a trickle. But it used to be, the Central Valley used to be turned into a lake, pretty much. And that's how it was. Aging infrastructure. Infrastructure is always going to age because people say, oh, there was a leak in something. Of course there's a leak. Infrastructure is always going to have the need for repair. So when you hear there's a leak, it's not a problem. It's something that needs to be addressed, and it's repairable. Remember, we got 700 miles of infrastructure to repair. So the Department of Water Resources is always after repair, and then where there's opportunity, we put new infrastructure, new innovation wherever we can. And then balancing water distribution is always key. We got 29 state water contractors. We gotta balance the water distribution so everybody gets their share. Water quality, I mentioned it earlier. Who likes to drink salty water? Only ocean fish or fish that kind of go between, like the salmon, go between both regular water and salt water. So water quality. And water quality also means runoff from farms. So just in the Delta alone, just to kind of put it in perspective, there's 200 water quality monitoring stations in the Delta alone. So that in itself, there's countries out there in the world that don't even have one. That's why you hear of all these things that are happening in other countries because they drink polluted water. Just in the Delta alone, we have 200 water quality monitoring stations. There are stations all over the state measuring water quality. So that guarantees us good water quality, and it's always a challenge to make sure we keep that water quality tip-top. Salinity, we mentioned that already. Groundwater management, you're gonna hear a lot about that now. That falls under our department. So you're gonna hear about SGMA, Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. That means a whole bunch of things right now because there's 515 groundwater basins. Actually, and as CEO Camacho mentioned, Valley Water is one of those water basins. It's one of those 515. So they're balancing what's happening underneath the ground too. And what was going on, there's sections of San Joaquin Valley that have sunk up to 25 feet because they have drawn too much water from the ground. And once you sank the land, you can't replace the aquifer underneath. But what does the aquifer mean to you? Why do we care what's underneath us? There's about 1,300 dams or so throughout the state. And people always ask, where's the next dam gonna be built? We have essentially built all the dams we possibly can. And then the other problem is, not a problem, is that we gotta always consider nature. We can't just go build more dams. So where are we gonna put all this other water that we're talking about, runoff and all the water we're gonna need in the future? Where are we gonna put it? In the ground. So research injection wells. Most of the water in Los Angeles, LA, is being injected into the ground. That's your natural banking capacity. Injection wells. There's a little town of Woodland here in Northern California. You can look up. There's a great article. They have 3 injection wells. They have a junior water right to the Sacramento River. In the wintertime, they can draw water, and they inject what they don't use into the ground as storage. So this is answering a lot of questions. We're going to tell the farmers, and they know this too. Everybody's going to start banking that water, and that's what SIGMA's about, saving those aquifers and making sure we manage our water correctly. So that also falls into the purview of the Department of Water Resources. So we're very busy, but that's to make sure we can sustain ourselves. We can sustain ourselves. Everybody gets their fair share of water. So remember, it's a balancing act, a huge balancing act. So the governor right now is working on voluntary agreements. Voluntary agreements means slowing down the lawsuits and sitting down with the different players, environmental players, the farmers, and the urban users, and trying to negotiate deals of how to balance out the needs of every aspect. So the salmon need water, the farmers need water. They're going to arrive to a deal, sit down on a table and talk about this without having to go to lawsuits, because we need the things to happen now, not years down the way because of the lawsuit. Delta conveyance. Everybody's heard about twin tunnels, the tunnel, the one tunnel. I really like to call it the pipeline, because it's really a pipeline. A tunnel is like this. Who's heard of the channel? The channel, it's between France and Great Britain, and they do it's a subway, it's a train, pretty much, and that's a tunnel. This is more of a pipeline. So sometimes people forget that there's many, and that's what many pipelines already of different kinds all over the place. So this is nothing new. It's just a discussion that's being had. And it's I just want to say 2 key points about that. Because there's always this fear in the Delta that the water's going to be taken away. Remember, water quality. You can't just remove water. It's going to affect everybody. Water quality has to be sustained for everybody. So the whole concept of the tunnel is 2 things. To be used in case of an emergency, like somebody mentioned, in case California gets split in half by an earthquake, or when we have excessive rain, so we have excessive runoff, and you want to capture that and send it down to a reservoir. So excess, emergency, that's it. So I just want to give you an idea. I know I gave you a bunch of information. There's more. You need probably a whole degree on this, like 4 or 5 years, to get it all together in your head. But I'm just trying to throw it out there. And then the next slide is pretty much a view of the State Water Project, and then we'll go into a Q&A. And you're a part of this big system. So that's what makes us the great state that we are. Questions? Questions, yes. You can maybe use the mic so they can capture it in the recording.
Did I hear you correctly that both the federal and state, although their water comes from the same source, although managed by the federal government and the state?
So no. So our source is Oroville, and the federal government, if you want to look at from the northern perspective, is Shasta. So two different dams, Shasta Dam and Oroville. Bless you, and Oroville. Any other questions? Just pick up the mic. Yeah.
I'm curious as to when that film was shot. Everything was so green.
This one, I think this is about 4 or 5 years old. 4 or 5 years old. So it might have been probably shot in the wintertime. Everything seems to have water in it. So, which is for the most part, even now, even though we've had because we had awesome rainfall last year, and the years before that, all our reservoirs are pretty full right now. So even though it hasn't rained, we're still good. It's just if it rains, if it doesn't rain as we go on, then we start getting worried about things.
I think I just quadrupled the number of places I've never camped before that I now want to go to, just because of that video.
Yes, and please do. All the places we are in partnerships with state parks, so all the places have access to camping, fishing, water, any water sport in there. So and Fish and Wildlife, they take care of all the fish in the water. So we're a huge collaborative. And so just to make sure, because there's no reason why you couldn't go to these lakes. They're there. So go.
What is a forebay and an afterbay?
So the forebay, just to kind of, is before the water gets pumped. And the afterbay is where the water ends up before it gets into a canal again.
So is the curvature of the infrastructure kind of to mimic the natural landscape?
Yes, that, and also they're trying to keep it dropping until it gets to a high point again where they got to pump it up. So it's dropping very gradually. So even when we're talking in the delta, in the valley, when we're talking San Joaquin Valley, we're talking about ground sinking. It'll destabilize our systems. So it's also really key to make sure that our aquifers don't go away, because that'll destroy the system.
So it slows it down as well.
Exactly. Yes.
All right.
You mentioned that the whole system is trying to be not reliant on fossil fuels by the year 2045. Is there any place that we can read about the specific measures that are being taken currently?
Yes. At the end of the PowerPoint, there's several links to different resources. All the information is there.
Thank you.
Question. How much of the entire system is funded by our water bill, and how much is coming from federal and state?
Okay, good question. So 29 state water contractors are paying for the bill. So it doesn't come from general fund or the federal government. 29 state water contractors. So basically, your district is paying their share.
From local funding or just from our utility bill in general?
No, so basically the water contractors are water customers, so they buy water from the system, so they pay for their portion, their allotment of water, so that goes to cover all the costs of the system. All right.
Sorry, I had one more. There's a lot of concrete that we saw in there. Like, how much, when the water's constantly moving, and I know we've all seen the aqueduct on I-5, like, how much of all that, how much erosion is going on a regular basis?
In terms of the concrete's pretty much lined, so there is repair work that gets done because you get cracks and things aging, but you got to keep it. There's very little seepage. There is seepage, but the whole idea is to keep it from seeping. We lose more water to evaporation. All right, real quick, I'm going to direct you to the bullet number 3. Go to this bullet, read the water resilience portfolio that the governor just put out. It's in draft form. It's still being updated, but read that. It'll inform you about a lot of things. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Raphael. So now we have time for a short 5-minute break. But before our break, I'd like to gather everyone in our pre-function lobby for our group photo that we're going to take right now. So if you can just walk outside these 2 doors here, and we'll take a group photo for the evening, and then we'll have a 5-minute break. Thank you.
Yeah, it's really good.
I mean, all your decisions. When I get something like this on the other side, you gotta go listen. Because then I want to see what decision you make after you have this conversation. I called Roz, I couldn't catch her. But now I understand why she reports to me, Roz.
It's the world of difference.
So that means,
I'm not comfortable with the decision.
Why is that?
It wouldn't get the program to where it needs to go. It would be status quo. Is that what you want for the program? Oh, yeah.
Well, here's the thing. You might want to talk to her because it's going to take a whole lot of convincing for me to believe her. You have someone that's probably one step ahead of this. I'm not going there. So then I got to deal with someone, then I'm just dealing with a vacant position. I can see why she's trying to get out. It's a person that's disappearing during the day for multi-hours, not producing, not doing work. Go have a conversation. She's like directly in the crosshairs of your trouble. And so I said, well, here's my concerns with you. She says, I've shared those concerns. But you've got to have your own conversation. I will let you make any management decision you want to, but I'm going to tell you, there's certain management decisions where I look at it, I'm going to say, oh, hell no, I can't. You cannot survive with that. And if that's occurring,
There's some
genuinely,
management decisions you make
such
right
as,
there things that I'm going to survive, but
such
I'm
as,
not going to discuss it
you
here.
know, I know where you're going. I
I'm
haven't
not
made
gonna,
any.
yes, you have.
Oh, have I?
Yeah, you have.
I gave you a chance.
That's
it.
complete. Okay,
It's not
then take it back.
everything.
Take it back.
I'm not
You
gonna
can take it back.
if you want,
Yeah,
I
Bree,
can
yeah.
put you back and put you over there. And if that's what you want, I give people opportunities. That's why Jose is back. Jose has a job right now. Yes, but here's the thing. You need to go have that conversation, and you actually need to dig in to what that is. I called Roz, she wasn't there, but get it.
So you want to have
This is the first conversation I had. Well, my conversation started with, was she part of this at all? My
me. That's fine.
All right, everyone, I'm going to ask you to come back and gather back inside. Okay, please finish up and come have a seat. Thank you. This is your 1-minute warning. Thank you. All right, well, I want to thank, there's a few people. I just want to thank Rafael Chavez for his very informative and impressive presentation that he gave, and he will be here this evening if you want to continue to ask him questions and learn more. Right now, I'd like to introduce you to Matthew Gloria Dalton. He is a Public Information Representative 2 here with our Water Supply Outreach Program, and he's going to be walking you through a bit of the Valley Water Speakers Bureau presentation. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. So Rafael set us up really well, and I'm going to overview Valley Water. This is going to be a high-level overview. You're going to get details about these different topic areas in our sessions throughout the Water Academy. Thank you, Mara, for introducing me. My name is Matthew Gloria Dalton. I'm a Public Information Representative with the Office of Civic Engagement, working on water supply outreach. Prior to my role here, I used to be an instructor of Communication Studies at San Jose State, and then I was also a Zero Waste Outreach Coordinator in Castro Valley. So let's begin. Valley Water was formed in 1929 as Santa Clara County's groundwater management agency. Increases in groundwater use in the late 1800s and early 1900s saw our groundwater supplies starting to get depleted and groundwater subsidence, subsidence, the ground starting to sinking, becoming a problem. So in 1929, Santa Clara County voters voted to approve the Santa Clara Valley Conservation District, Water Conservation District, to start to address that groundwater problem. And so when the district was formed, they formed a plan to build a series of dams and water infrastructure to start to recharge our ground aquifer and provide a reliable water supply to Santa Clara County. Groundwater is still a part of our mission today, and our mission is expanded. So first, we supply clean, safe drinking water for Santa Clara County. Second, we offer flood protection through ensuring our waterways can handle higher flows and that they are clean of debris. And then third, we offer environmental stewardship. We take care of our natural ecosystem so that it's healthy and usable for future generations, and it reduces flood potential. You're going to hear a lot about the Safe Clean Water and Natural Flood Protection Program throughout the Academy. I'll briefly highlight it today, and you'll hear more about it in the next session, but it's a core part of how Valley Water achieves its mission. So our board is committed to aggressively protecting our water supply for the 2 million residents, daily commuters, the 15 cities, and 4,700 direct well owners in Santa Clara County. You receive your water through one of the 13 local water providers who receive that water from us as the water wholesaler in Santa Clara County. So we are a public water resources agency with an elected board of directors, and you've met our board chair, Nai Shui. So our organization has about a $510 million budget, most of that money being slated for repair and maintenance of our infrastructure. And our CFO, who will be speaking next about rates and budget, We'll actually go into that further when he comes up. So now for the question some of you were asking, where does our water come from in Santa Clara County? Well, it comes from a lot of places. 55% of the water we consume in Santa Clara County is imported. 40% of that coming from the state and federal water project, and Rafael highlighted part of that, and 15% coming from the San Francisco Hetch Hetchy system. So a majority of our water right now is imported. 30% of our water supply is locally sourced from either reservoirs or groundwater. 10% of our water supply is not water, but our efforts to save water, conservation. So that's saving water at home and at our businesses. And then lastly, 5% of our water supply is recycled and purified water. That number will be going up in the years to come to 10%, but this is two types of water. Firstly, non-drinkable recycled water, which is used for commercial applications, irrigation and agriculture, and then in the future, potable reuse. So purifying treated wastewater even more to a really clean level, creating a new drinking water supply. So you heard Rafael highlight Delta Conveyance. You might have heard the term the California Water Fix. It was originally a 2-tunnel system to help transport water underneath the Bay Delta in times of excess water and to protect that precious Delta ecosystem. And Valley Water, through our board, is committed to the 1-tunnel project, now titled Delta Conveyance, to protect that ecosystem and ensure Valley Water and Santa Clara County receives our allotted supply of water. So here's our graph about groundwater in Santa Clara County. And the district was formed in 1929, which you can see by about right there. And you can see there was a really big decline in our groundwater supply as demand started to increase and population started to increase. And you can see ground subsidence as well. So as we formed the district and started to recharge our groundwater supply, you can see our groundwater supply starting to get full again. And then as population began to grow, that supply dwindled again until we added state project water, imported water, and federal project water, imported water in the 60s and 80s, which really helped us restore our groundwater supply, which is still an important part of our water supply and allows us to have an emergency supply in times of drought. Here's a picture of our comprehensive water system. As you can see, Valley Water operates a lot of different infrastructure in the county. We have 10 reservoirs currently, totaled they're at 33% capacity. We have 3 water treatment plants, 1 advanced water purification center. We maintain 275 miles of the 800 miles of creeks and streams in Santa Clara County. And we operate 142 miles of pipelines, 3 pumping stations, and 400 acres of groundwater recharge facilities. So a lot of our infrastructure here in Santa Clara County was built back in the 50s and 60s, and it's aging. It's in need of infrastructure repair. Valley Water, through our capital improvement program, is working on numerous projects over the next few years, totaling billions of dollars to upgrade and repair our infrastructure so it can withstand for years to come. Another way we're providing resiliency or reliability of our water supply is through the Pacheco Reservoir Expansion Project. Pacheco Reservoir is a small 5,500 acre-foot reservoir in South Santa Clara County, and an acre-foot is about 325,000 gallons of water, for reference. After the project is completed, Pacheco Reservoir will have 140,000 acre-foot capacity, more than all of our reservoirs combined. This is enough water to supply 1.4 million residents for a year in times of drought. Water reuse is also another way we're looking at providing a reliable supply. I already highlighted non-drinkable recycled water, purple pipe water. You might have seen a purple pipe or a purple sign somewhere in the county. There's also advanced purified water. This is treating that water further using advanced technology to create a new water supply. And Valley Water is going to be expanding water reuse and indirect potable reuse, so using advanced purified water to recharge our groundwater table. So as I mentioned under our supply slide, conservation is a big part of what we do. Conservation is our water saving measures, and we do that at the commercial and at the residential level. And we save a lot of water here in Santa Clara County. One other way we work on conservation to ensure we save water is through our rebate program. Valley Water offers numerous rebates for commercial and residential. Some examples include laundry to landscape or installing gray water systems, rainwater capture, and installing drought-tolerant vegetation in your yards. And Valley Water offers $1 per square foot for that replacement for that drought-tolerant plants. And you can go to our website, valleywater.org, under rebates to learn more about that. So ensuring our water is safe is a big part of what we do. And Valley Water has a water quality lab that tests around 170,000 samples from our reservoirs, water treatment plants, groundwater supply, rivers, creeks and streams, and purification center every year to ensure that we're identifying any contaminants and providing water that meets regulated levels. Flood protection is the second pillar of what we do. And you heard flood protection talked about a little bit. But Valley Water is Santa Clara County's flood control agency. And we've already spent over $1 billion on flood protection projects that currently protect about 100,000 parcels from flooding or pieces of property from flooding in Santa Clara County. And through future flood protection efforts, we plan to add 25,000 more parcels to that number, 125,000 pieces of land or parcels protected through our various flood protection projects as we go forward. Many of you remember in 2016 and 17, we had a lot of rain, and that rain helped us recharge our groundwater supply. Unfortunately, there was also some flooding with that rain in the off of Coyote Creek in the Rock Springs neighborhood of San Jose. And Valley Water takes this very seriously and our role as a flood protection agency for the county very seriously. And we're working to protect that neighborhood and all other neighborhoods in the county through our flood protection projects. Another way we're doing that is through our stream maintenance program. Our crews are out in the field at our rivers, creeks, and streams all the time, ensuring that debris is removed and that those waterways can handle flows. So another way we're protecting against flooding is through engagement, engaging our community and engaging our community partners. So through the community rating system, which is a FEMA program, along with our partners, we've been able to save $2.2 million on flood insurance premiums for Santa Clara County residents. It's a really really good program. And the third part of our mission, the third pillar, is environmental stewardship. With environmental stewardship, we're out hosting cleanups, we're engaging our different populations to get them engaged in maintaining and being stewards of their own environment. And we have a really robust engagement program. We also have grants which help engage members of the community in those efforts to maintain a healthy ecosystem. And in reality, it also helps with flood protection. So our creek stewardship program is really an effective tool at doing that. Residents can adopt a section of creek, or the community can participate in one of our creek cleanups. In September of last year, we had around 2,200 residents and community members come out and clean up 58 miles of creeks and streams through our National River Cleanup Day, and they removed thousands and thousands of pounds of trash. So our education program engages students at all levels throughout the county to start to build that critical competency around our water supply, around our environment, and those important topics, so that our community is educated as time goes forward about our water supply and the challenges that are affecting us. So I mentioned in the beginning the Clean, Safe Water and Natural Flood Protection Program, which is a critical element of what we do. And you'll hear a lot about that throughout the Academy. But just a little bit of information, it's a 15-year bond measure that was approved in 2012 by 74% of Santa Clara County voters, and is a critical tool allowing us to address those challenges and provide a reliable, clean, and safe water supply for Santa Clara County, flood protection, and ensuring our waterways are free from hazards and contaminants. So that's really the end of the overview. There's a few links up here, and those are in your slides as well. Our subject matter experts at various sessions throughout the Academy will highlight these topic areas in depth so you can learn more about them. And actually, so now we're going to have a Q&A. So if you have any questions about this presentation, I'd be glad to take them.
Thank you. You speak really well, actually.
Thank you.
Very quick and efficient. So you said something about a community rating program.
Yes.
Can you dive a little bit more into what that meant?
Yeah, the community rating program is a program through FEMA. It's a series of things that we do, from the big flood protection projects to our information campaigns and education campaigns. And what we do gives us a rating that allows us to it reduces the premiums on flood insurance for those that live in zones that are required to have flood insurance. And so those efforts can realize different savings. Right now, it's about 15% savings for some of the areas in Santa Clara County, and it really changes depending on where you're at and the work that's being done in that area around flood protection.
I know that voters passed Measure T last election period, and I was wondering if you guys received any of that funding for infrastructure rebuilding.
I can't speak to that topic. I don't know an answer on that topic, but we can definitely get you a response on the question.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
For those like me who don't know, what is gray water, and or rather, how does gray water get kind of like recycled back? I'm just looking at the sign on the picture that says it's from like your laundry to.
Yeah. So your laundry water is actually a source of water that you can use on your plants and vegetation, especially if you're using like organic soaps or soaps that don't have a lot of petrochem in them, right? And it's a great way to save that drinking water supply and use this water that you've already used to water your gardens and your plants and save that precious drinking water supply.
You mentioned that there's a lot of grants. I think when you're talking about healthy environment and creek stewardship, what kinds of grants are available, and who generally, or what kinds of projects do they usually go to?
There are various types of grants. We have mini grants all the way up to much larger grants, total large amounts of money. And they go to different types of elements of the community, for all the way up for nonprofits or organizations that are out there keeping our creeks and waterways clean, all the way down to small like students or people that want to do a small environmental project. Sherilyn actually worked on that program. She can actually add more to that.
Actually, I was going to say that we're going to have a speaker in a couple sessions down who's going to come in and talk more about the grants program, so you'll get a lot more information.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Darren Taylor, who is our CFO, and he is going to talk about our rate setting and budget process.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Darren Taylor. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for Valley Water. And I'm really happy to see all of you here tonight. It says a lot about your values, as CEO Camacho said. I remember back in 2001 when I applied for a position here. I did so because I wanted to work for an organization that was all about making the world a better place. And certainly Valley Water does that through the protection and augmentation of water supplies, which is a key ingredient to life here in the county, and the provision of flood protection projects and activities for the protection of the folks who live here. And we do those things in an environmentally sensitive manner. And so, as you can imagine, doing those things costs money, and that's the purpose of my presentation tonight, is to give you an overview of Valley Water finances and the rate setting process. So I'm going to dive into this presentation, and I'll start with just the very simple organization. We're organized by groups of funds, if you will. And in the upper left-hand corner is the water utility. So that's our water utility funds. Those funds account for activities to ensure a reliable water supply in the county. We're the principal wholesale water provider in Santa Clara County. Upper right-hand corner, that's the Safe Clean Water measure that you just heard Matthew describe. That's the 15-year program ballot measure that was passed in 2012 to do many good activities and provide different flood protection projects and habitat enhancement and things like that for the community. That's a separate fund. Lower left-hand corner is the Watershed Stream Stewardship Fund that accounts for flood protection and watershed management activities. And then the lower right-hand side, that's our administration set of funds that account for strategic support services provided to other funds, things like the legal support, HR, finance, IT, so on and so forth. And now we'll talk, the next 3 slides will kind of give you a breakdown of the revenues that we receive. And I'll talk about the FY20 budget. And of course, fiscal year FY is July 1 through June 30. Our budget for the current fiscal year is $501.8 million. And this graph here shows you the various revenue categories organized from largest to smallest. And I've circled the water utility related categories. Treated water is the largest category. We sell treated water to 7 water retail providers here in the county, including San Jose Water Company and the city of Mountain View, city of San Jose, so on and so forth. GWP stands for groundwater production charge, so about 5,000 wells here in the county. And for anyone who pumps water from a well, we will charge a groundwater production charge to recoup our costs to provide water supply augmentation so that there's water to pump. And then the state water project tax is $18 million. You'll find for those homeowners, your property tax bill will have a line item on there for a state water project tax. That money goes to Valley Water. And what do we do with that? We pay for the state water project costs that Mr. Chavez spoke of earlier. So the average homeowner will pay about $27 per year on their tax bill for that imported water for state water project water. And then off to the right-hand side, surface and recycled water. We do sell a little bit of surface and recycled water, and it's a small piece of our revenue for the water utility there. And our water utility revenue can only be used for water utility activities. We can't mix and match and send that revenue over to flood protection, for example. And this next slide talks about the flood protection, mainly flood protection revenues that we have. The third largest source of revenue is the 1% ad valorem property taxes. So again, on your property tax bill, you'll see the 1% ad valorem collection. So we receive, I think it's about 1% of the 1% collection that's collected in county-wide. And so that revenue is primarily used for flood protection activities. That's a fungible rates revenue source for us. The board can use that for any activity under the District Act. The special parcel tax revenue piece, that's $45.5 million. That again is on your property tax bill for the special bond measure that was passed in 2012. And that money can only be used for that bond measure, cannot be used for anything else. There are specific activities described in that bond measure that was passed by 74% of the voters. That revenue can only be used for those activities. And then benefit assessments, $13.4 million. Those are revenues that pay for debt service that was incurred by Valley Water in the year 2000 or prior to pay for flood protection projects. And so by 2030, that debt service will be all paid off, kind of like paying off your mortgage, and then that benefit assessment will go away. So again, it's a line on your property tax bill, and I think the largest amount for certain areas of the county is $27 per year, going down to zero. Southern portion of the county doesn't pay anything right now. Their debt service is paid off. And here's the next couple of categories. These are smaller categories: capital reimbursements, interest earnings on cash reserves, other, meaning things like rental income for certain properties that we own, and then intergovernmental services. We provide maintenance on certain facilities that San Benito Water District also benefits from, and so they pay us for that activity. And so a question that I've heard many times over the years is, from well owners, is why do well owners pay Valley Water to pump water from the ground? It's our property. Isn't it our water underneath the ground? Why can't we just pump that out for free? Well, the simple answer is that local rainfall cannot sustain Santa Clara County water needs, and we learned that very early on in the 1900s. And so at that point in time, with groundwater elevations going down, Valley Water was formed in 1929 to construct reservoirs that would conserve water that we could then use to recharge in various areas. And since then, we have built treatment plants that would help provide what we call in-lieu recharge. So the provision of treated water helps preserve groundwater basin. And so we built dams in the 30s and 50s. We built treatment plants in the 60s and 70s and 80s. And now we operate this big system conjunctively to make sure that there's enough water supply for all areas of the county. And the groundwater production charge was established in the 1960s as a reimbursement mechanism to pay for the efforts that Valley Water undertakes to protect and augment water supply. And this is a graphic that you saw earlier in Matthew's presentation. I'm listing here some of the activities that we do to provide a reliable water supply. And if you think about Valley Water, you think about big infrastructure. Several years ago, we put together an estimate of what it would cost to replace the system here in the county, and we came up with $7 billion. If we were to redo that analysis today, it would probably be closer to $10 billion. And if you think about big infrastructure, the dams, 10 dams, 3 water treatment plants, those are big facilities. Even the pipelines that we have built and maintained, they're big. They're big enough to walk in. I would never walk in one of those pipelines, but we have people here at Valley Water who do that. We operate and maintain local reservoirs. We purchase imported water, as Matthew described earlier. We operate and maintain raw, treated, and recycled water pipelines and monitor and protect groundwater from pollutants. And Valley Water has a pricing policy that maximizes the effective water use. And the basic concept there is beneficiaries pay for the benefits provided. And we are organized into groundwater charge zones. And groundwater charges are levied in those zones for the benefits received. And the map on the left-hand side shows you the existing zones. The pink shaded area is the northern part of the county. That's one zone where the rate is all the same for that zone. And then in the southern part of the county, in the yellow shaded area, which includes Gilroy and Morgan Hill, that's the southern portion, and there's a separate rate for that particular zone. And staff has proposed a modification to zones that I'll talk about in the next slide. But essentially, groundwater charges are levied within those zones for the benefits received. A key concept of the pricing policy is called a pooling concept, which means that all water sources and water facilities contribute to the common benefit within a zone, regardless of cost. And this is what helps us maximize effective use of available resources across the county and avoid shortages in one area and surplus in another. And then finally, agricultural water is charged, is by policy, cannot exceed 10% of the non-agricultural charge, or M&I, municipal and industrial. And that is quite a discount, but in recognition of the fact that agricultural use provides open space, ecosystem benefits, recharge benefits, and in fact, by our district act, we're limited to setting agricultural rates at no higher than 25% of the non-agricultural charge, and the board has taken that a little bit further. I mentioned proposed new zones, and so on the left-hand side, you see the modified or the proposed modified zone in the northern part of the county, with the blue outline being the current zone and the shaded area being the modified zone. So the modified zone is a little bit smaller. We've excluded certain areas that we have determined via a scientific comprehensive study that don't benefit from our activities to provide recharge or in-lieu recharge conservation. And so it's a little bit smaller, but essentially a negligible financial impact. And then on the right-hand side, this map shows that what staff is proposing is a partitioning of the existing South County zone into 3 zones. So again, the outline shows the existing zone. We're proposing Zone W7 in the north, which would overlay Coyote Valley, and then 2 small zones called Zone W8 that for areas that are just below the Uvis and Chesbrough reservoirs. And then the green shaded area is the modified Zone W5, which overlays the Yagas Basin, which includes the cities of Gilroy and most of Morgan Hill and all of San Martin. And another question that I hear a lot, or I've heard a lot over the years, is, well, why are there different rates, wholesale water rates, in the different zones? And well, the answer to that question is that the infrastructure that is needed to provide water in a zone costs money. And so the vast majority of our infrastructure is in the North County. There we've got the 3 water treatment plants, the vast majority of reservoirs, the Silicon Valley Advanced Water Purification Center, and imported water from the State Water Project. There are some shared facilities, including the Anderson and Coyote reservoirs and the future Pacheco expanded reservoir, and imported water from the Central Valley Project, which comes in through the southern portion of the county. About 20% of it stays in the southern part of the county, in the South County, and about 80% of it flows north. Shared facilities, and then the South County only facilities include the Uvis and Chesbro reservoirs and the recycled water center at the SCROSS system, the South County Regional Wastewater Authority down in Gilroy. And in red here, I've kind of marked some of the changes that will occur with the proposed new zones. For example, Zone W8 doesn't benefit from those shared facilities. It's little zones that don't receive recharge water from those facilities. Zone W7, Coyote Valley, doesn't benefit from Chesbro and Uvis reservoirs, and Zone W5 is the only reservoir or the zone that benefits from recycled water. And so this is a diagram that kind of explains real quick the approach that we use to rate setting. So if you look at the stacked bar column on the left-hand side, first thing we do is we develop our costs. We have a model that goes through and where we project our capital costs, capital infrastructure needs, operations costs for a particular year and on into the future. We do a 10-year forecast, and debt service that is paid like your mortgage payment on any debt that's been issued. And then the middle column is our funding sources. So starting from the bottom of that column, we do receive some tax monies, as I mentioned, a little bit of 1% ad valorem property tax, that state water project tax that I mentioned earlier, grants, interest, and other, and then debt proceeds. On occasion, we issue debt to pay that, which helps provide upfront funding for capital projects, which is later paid back over time by water charges. So when you take a look at our costs or revenue requirements on the left-hand side, and then the non-water charge funding sources, you take that difference, and that difference is the revenue required from water charges. And so once we know that revenue requirement from water charges, we can estimate the water use that's going to be used in the coming year, and then we can calculate or back into the rate, the wholesale rates that would be required to generate that revenue. So it's pretty simple from that perspective. The dotted lines there just kind of show you the difference, sort of not really to scale, but you can kind of tell that the vast majority of costs and revenues are in the North County Zone W2. Again, that's where all of our infrastructure is, and a much smaller piece of the water utility is the South Zone. We do keep reserve levels just like you would keep in your bank account for the unknown. We keep reserve levels that are about 3 to 4 months worth of our operating outlays for the unknown. And in rate setting, we target financial targets that help keep our bond ratings high and keep the water utility financially healthy. We target a debt service coverage ratio of 2 times, which is basically your operating revenue minus your operating costs, gives you a number. That number should be 2 times greater than your debt service. Pretty simple. As long as we're able to do that, we maintain financial health. And we keep reserves at our policy minimums. And today we enjoy very high credit ratings. AA1 from Moody's and AA+ from Fitch, which is just a notch below a AAA rating. And in keeping our ratings high helps us keep our borrowing costs low. So it's important to do that. Talked about water usage earlier. This is our water usage trend for Valley Water. This is district managed water usage. So this is the water use that translates to revenue for Valley Water. And the green portions of the stack bar represent actuals in the past. Red is our estimated actual for the just completed fiscal year in FY19. We don't yet have the full actuals yet for that year because not every well is metered, so we have to go through an audit process to audit production statements for those well owners who don't have meters, so we can estimate the amount of water that they used, and that takes a little bit of time. Blue is our projection of water use, and you can see the big story that happened over the past year was in the red column, FY19, we had a wet spring. So when there is rain occurring in February and in March and in April, on a consistent basis, what do people do? They delay turning on their sprinklers, which causes water usage to go down, and which also means that reduced revenue for Valley Water. And so in light of that, we took a look at our water usage projection, and we decided to lower that water usage projection beginning in FY21 out into the future. For FY20, we're showing a 239,000 acre feet of water use. We think we're going to come in a little bit shy of that this year, given what happened in FY19 and the trend that we're seeing in FY20. So going forward, we reduce that water use projection accordingly. And of course, reducing water use means, all other things being equal, upward pressure on your water rates. So that's the unfortunate thing about that. But the great thing about that is we're conserving water, and meaning lower water bills for people who conserve. And also over the long term, that means the more we conserve, the less we have to invest in new water supplies for the future. So it's overall better that this is happening. And so this next couple of slides shows you some of the key drivers of the water rates projections that I'm about to show you. And it's driven by, we talked about aging infrastructure. We are in the process of embarking on many large projects, mega projects, if you will. Dam seismic retrofits comprise about $934 million worth of projects over the next 10 years to seismically retrofit our dams. On the right-hand side, you see the Rinconada Water Treatment Plant reliability improvement, a picture of that. That's a $328 million project that would extend the service life of that particular facility for the next 50 years and expand the facility's capability from 80 million gallons a day to 100 million gallons a day. That facility was built in 1967, so it's well overdue for an upgrade. And then the Purified Water Program, that's a $643 million project to produce new drought-proof water supply, if you will, for the county, which is the wave of the future. We just signed an agreement with the cities of Palo Alto and Mountain View to purchase wastewater that we'll then use sometime in the future to purify it and either inject it into the ground or potentially direct potable reuse into our treatment plants and then out into the treatment, from our treatment facilities. Another key project is the Pacheco Reservoir expansion that you heard about earlier. It's a $1.3 billion project. Fortunately, we have received $485 million of state funding for that project. We're also pursuing $250 million worth of federal funding under the WIN Act. We're contemplating a low-cost federal loan under the WIFIA program. We have a willing partner in San Benito Water District that would pay up to 10%. We may seek other partners for this particular project, and we're considering perhaps funding a little bit of this with a special tax measure as well, continuation of the current tax measure. And then ultimately, water charges would help pay for this project. And as mentioned, it would become the largest reservoir in the county with 140,000 acre feet of water. And so here's the preliminary groundwater charge increase scenarios that we provided to the board in January. This is not a recommendation, but we walked through several different scenarios with the board. I won't talk through all of them with you, but basically the board gave us direction to rely on scenario 4 for the purposes of preparing the staff recommended charges for the upcoming year. And the projection there is an 8.6% annual increase in the North County over the next 10 years, again, driven by the very large capital infrastructure projects that we are undertaking. In the South County, we're looking at 5.3% per year increases for that scenario, a little bit less there. And so how does that translate to the average household? In the North County, that projection translates to about $4 per month to the average household bill in the North County, and then under $1 in the South County. And you can see how that projection translates for the next 10 years as well. And that doesn't include any increase that a water retailer would layer on top of that. So I mentioned the modified and new zones that staff is proposing for this upcoming year. So how does that translate? How do we translate from old zones or existing zones to new zones? Well, in the blue shaded area, show the FY20 M&I or non-agricultural groundwater charge at $13.74 per acre foot. Again, a football field at 12 inches of water for FY20, and then FY21 at $14.92. That was your 8.6% increase. And then for the modified zone W2, again, very little financial impact from the modified zone, so same price there for both M&I and ag water. And then in the South County, as we're partitioning into 3 zones, we would go from 481 per acre foot to 506 in FY21. And then the modified zone W5, which is Gilroy and most of Morgan Hill, would see a decrease in their rate based on the benefits provided in that zone. Zone W7 over the Coyote Valley would see an increase, again, based on the benefits provided. And then new zone W8, that small area right below Uvis and Chesbro reservoirs, would see a fairly significant decrease because of the fact that the CVP, the imported water from the federal government, the Anderson Coyote system doesn't benefit that particular zone. And this next slide kind of explains a little bit further why there is this kind of diverging rates in those new zones. And the simple explanation there between zone W7, the Coyote Valley at the top, and W5, the green shaded area, is that the majority of our district managed recharge water flows to zone W7. 56% of that is in the South County flows to W7. It's a small and dynamic basin there, so it requires more district managed recharge, but there's only 22% of the water use there. Whereas in W5, only 44% of that water flows there, 76% of the water use. So you can see that as where the water flows, that's where the cost goes, and then where the costs are, that affects the rates. And every year we go through a pretty lengthy process to set water rates. We've already gone through the preliminary portion of that in January. The next key couple of dates are February 28th, this Friday, where we'll be mailing out notices to all well owners within the county, letting them know of the public process, to engage with the board of directors and provide feedback and comments, and also what the staff proposed water rates are for the upcoming year. And then in April timeframe, we'll be having our public hearings here in this very room, and also a public hearing down in the South County in Gilroy this year, and then a conclusion of that public hearing here again on April 28th, ultimately with May 12th being set as the date for the board to adopt water charges and the budget. And this last slide, I wanted to kind of mention to you some of the questions that you may hear. I've heard these questions. At the top, why don't water rates ever go down? Well, actually you saw that for the new zones, we're going to see water rates go down in a couple of zones, but that's an unusual circumstance. Water is a rising cost industry as a result of the need to invest in infrastructure, also inflation impacts, and also climate change is becoming more and more of a factor for us in terms of the need for new infrastructure or repairing our infrastructure. Question 2, shouldn't water be free? Kind of gets back to that question I mentioned earlier. Well, no, I mean, water itself is free when it comes from the sky, but what people are actually paying for is all the infrastructure to move that water where it needs to go. And we are, Valley Water is a service provider, not a commodity provider like Pepsi-Cola, right? So, what we charge, we don't make any profit. All we charge is what's needed to recoup our costs to provide that service to the community. Third question, my water rates went up during the drought. I feel like I was punished for conserving water. Please don't feel punished. That is absolutely not what's going on. It's a simple matter of economics when that happens, when you see a drought or water usage go down. Our cost structure is highly fixed, and our revenues are based on water usage, so they're variable. So as water usage goes down, cost structure is fixed. Well, all other things being equal, water rates have to rise a little bit in the near term to help us meet and pay for those costs. But as I mentioned earlier, conservation is the right thing to do, and over the long term, our costs will be lower as a community by conserving. So I will pause there. If there's any questions, happy to take them, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you for putting all that together and sharing it with us. One question I had was you said that some of the income comes from rental properties. Can you tell me a little bit about that? And then I do have a second question. I wasn't clear on debt proceeds. Can you tell me about those two things?
Sure. So let's start with rental income. We do own some properties, and we rent those properties out. Basically, the concept is to, as we build flood protection projects, in certain cases, we need to buy properties in order to build what needs to be built. And so until we build those, when we buy the properties, we'll rent them out until such time we can construct. And in some cases, we have actually bought properties as a flood protection project, so we'll rent them out until such time as if erosion happens and it's no longer rentable. So that's where that comes from. Your second question was on debt proceeds. We do issue debt for the water utility to help pay for upfront costs for capital. If we didn't issue debt, you would see our water rates spiking up and down dramatically. Issuing debt helps us smooth out our water rate projection.
Where does the debt go? Like, when you say issue debt?
Sure. Yes, so it is issued. We have a sale. Big insurance companies will buy it. We'll offer them. It's today. Last issuance was something like 3.5% that we're paying. So they'll get the interest earnings on that, right? As we pay our debt service, we'll get the upfront funding, which helps us pay for the capital projects up front.
Do you have any influence at all on the water retailers?
They are their own entity, so they will do, I mean, obviously, we're a significant chunk of their cost structure, typically about 50%. But other than that, we have no influence on them, so to speak. We can ask them to help us conserve and work with us, but we don't have any control or authority over them.
I've seen my water rate go up at 2.5 times, and I'm using less water. I don't have a problem paying the same amount that I used to pay when I used a lot of water, but to have my rates go up even 2.5 times and I'm using less water, something doesn't compute for me. I know you don't have any control over it, but they buy their water from you. I wish you could do something about it.
Yeah.
That's it. There's no
Thank
further comment.
So when allocating funds, do you take any external factors besides statistics from previous fiscal years and projects like meteorological studies?
Well, we do consider things like that, but in general, we look at trends, history, inputs from our water retailers, things like that to project water usage. We do look at those other things to kind of see what's happening. We also look at the economy, what's happening with the economy. But for the most part, it's our own. I've been here for 18 years. A lot of it is
Just
judgment.
projections?
Just good judgment.
Okay, thank you.
My question actually, outside of the Anderson Dam kind of scope of project, which is obviously a ton of construction, how much of the expenses are actually labor?
Good question. In a construction project, how much is labor? Certainly there's a chunk of that, but I would say that for the most part, we enter into agreements with big construction firms and we manage them.
Oh no, I meant
And they're- yeah.
non-construction projects, like outside of the dam, which obviously is a huge thing. Like, how much is labor versus equipment, kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah, it's a large portion of our non-capital costs. The other largest piece of our cost is imported water purchases. But other than imported water purchases, it's all about labor. And I think that was the last one, right? You take one more? Okay.
There was an Ag Water Advisory Panel or Committee. How do I get there?
Well, I think you'd probably want to talk to your board member in your district because they are always looking for volunteers to serve on their committees.
User? Oh, not anymore. Not since 2009.
So the question that our chair just said is that you need to be an agricultural water user. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rick Callender. I'm the Chief of External Affairs here. So I oversee the Offices of Communications, Government Relations, and Civic Engagement, which this program is housed under. You know, this is always a proud day for me when I get an opportunity to address you. I know I'm the last thing between you and your car, so I promise I'm going to be very short. So, yeah, but first, welcome and congratulations. This really is the board's flagship leadership program. When this program was thought of a few years ago, we said, you know, can we do something? Can we actually generate the interest? And you heard our chair talk about the fact that, you know, how many applicants we had that actually really wanted to come and participate. And by you staying here this evening shows that you're truly committed. I really do hope, and I'm going to cover a few of the sessions that are coming up. just a little bit about me. So I grew up in this community. I grew up in the Blossom Valley neighborhood. I went to Santa Teresa High School. Those of you that know the Blossom Valley neighborhood, I used to live not too far from Curry. I used to cut up the area and then cut through a fence. There was a creek. It was called Canoas Creek, and in order to get to Santa Teresa High School. And these people, so the gate would always be cut, and we'd be able to cut through the gate in order to take a shortcut to Santa Teresa High School. And these evil people from the Santa Clara Valley Water District kept fixing the gate to take away our shortcut. So that was my first experience. I had no idea who the Santa Clara Valley Water District was. You know, I'd gone through Mesa engineering programs. I studied engineering when I went off to college. And I didn't know a lot about the opportunities to be in public service. So when I first got the opportunity, my mentor encouraged me to come over here and become a part of this program. I said, why would I want to go work in the water industry? That is so boring. He said, Rick, you have no idea. Well, 23 years later, I'm telling you, that was one of the best decisions that my mentor could make to tell me to do in my life, is to come over here. I've had a full career. I've got to learn a lot. The politics of water, the politics of flood control, the politics of being able to work within our community and being able to work with folks like you. I live here too. What happens in this community, I care about. So whatever we do affects me. Whatever we do is on my property taxes as well. So I care just as much about what we do as you do. The only difference is I work here and I've been here for 23 years. The one thing I did want to cover, the staff did want me to cover a few things in terms of what our sessions are, in terms of coming up. Our next session is going to be on the water utility. We'll be hearing from Nina Hawk. She's one of the folks that sits on the side of me. She's our Chief Operating Officer for the water utility. You'll hear from other subject matter experts as you did today. Hopefully you'll find it very engaging. Every time I get the chance to listen to folks, I listen to Derek all the time, every time, and I learn something new every time he speaks. So for me, it's always exciting to basically be able to listen to our own utility folks. The third session is going to focus on our watershed side of the house. I believe we'll have Melanie Richardson. She is another chief that works actually her office is right next to mine. She'll be covering the watersheds and what goes on in the watersheds. Fourth session is going to be looking at securing our water supply. I know our CEO barely touched on Anderson. Anderson is in the news right now. As you know, all you got to do is open up anything, Google Anderson Dam. There is hundreds of articles. I went to the CEO today and said, hey, there is an article where you're quoted in the USA Today. That doesn't happen. She said, I'm going to share it with my parents. But obviously, it's a big project. When Silicon Valley is in the news and they're talking about the largest dam and the largest water supply project, of course it's going to make USA Today. You get a front row seat in being able to ask some of these questions and seeing what's going on with these projects. So hopefully when you get a chance to go back into your community, we're trying to create leaders. We're trying to create folks that are going to do exactly what you said, sit on our agricultural advisory committees, but we got so many other committees that can make recommendations back to the board, and the board is looking for active people like you. So hopefully we'll be able to use this as an opportunity to be trained to do better, be able to serve. The fifth session will include the field trip, which is actually one of my favorite things. We're going to shoot out to San Luis Reservoir and work our way back into town. You'll get to see firsthand how these projects work, and you get an opportunity to ask questions. I'm telling you, for me, it's always exciting being able to go out there, even though I get to do a lot of time. Then the sixth session will be a graduation reception actually right prior to a board meeting, so the board members will get a chance to thank you. You'll get a chance, hopefully, take the picture with the chair and everyone else as a graduating class. So you took one in the beginning, you'll take one in the end. We won't have caps, you won't have to throw anything up, but we will have food, we'll have a reception for you. Finally, I want to ask the staff who worked on this to stand. So please stand. And let's give these folks a round of applause. So, to pull together events like this is truly hard. It's not only project management, it's being able to reach out into the community, ensure that each representative district has at least 3 people at the table, and being able to give those to the directors so that the directors can say, here are the 3 people that I think best represent my district and will be the community leaders as it relates to being a water ambassador. So these are the folks that were able to secure your applications, put them in front of the board of directors so the board members can choose you to be their next water ambassadors. So I do want to thank the staff for pulling this together. And finally, again, I want to thank you and encourage you to fill out the evaluation forms. I don't know, they are there. So if we can hopefully get the evaluation forms in everyone's hands very quickly, because I know if you're like me, you're thinking about starting the car. So thank you for coming. I look forward to seeing you at the next session. And I'm going to look to Mara. When is the next session? Make sure I can say it.
The next session is March 18th.
Mar-
See you on March 18th.
March 18th. Thank you so much. The survey should be really easy to fill out. Just make sure you circle the numbers of how you feel and make sure that you hand back in. Thank you for joining the program and look forward to seeing you at the next session.
And make sure to, you can bring your binders home with you, but make sure to bring those binders back with you for the next session. We'll be adding an insert under section 2 for that session, which will have the agenda, the PowerPoints, the bios for those speakers, and any other resources. So just make sure you bring those back.
Yes,
Thank
and
you.
I do have an update. Thank you for that, Matthew. So that, again, was to please bring your binders back every session so that we can give you new materials to add to those binders. Also, next session, session 2, will be in our classic boardroom. So we will not be meeting in this boardroom, but being in our classic boardroom, and we will give you those detailed directions on how to get there. It's still here on the same campus, just in a different building, okay? So I don't know how many of you came in here off Blossom Hill, but our old boardroom is right down the way, and so we'll give you another view of our Valley Water facility. So we thank you so much for being here with us this evening. Please, like Rick said, fill out that evaluation form, and we look forward to seeing you again next month. So thank you so much.